The protagonist is the narrative core to any story. Even for an ensemble cast like in Total Drama, this is true. There's always going to be somebody who gets more depth than anyone else. But the Total Drama reboot is a special case in particular. Having an order of 2 seasons with the exact same cast meant that their leads were split in an interesting way. One contestant managed to stay prevalent in every episode, with another batch of characters both leading and ending her plotline, while also getting a presence of their own, all mixing together into what I'd consider the heart of the Total Drama reboot. If you somehow haven't figured it out yet, or you closed your eyes when clicking on this video, I'm talking about Priya, Caleb, and Millie, who are some of the most polarizing characters the show has ever seen. It feels like nobody has any solid grasp on what this trio's general consensus should be. I've yet to see anything put together that I'd overall agree with, and I want to figure out why these characters are as divisive as they are. This will be more of a retrospective and not much of a season 3 writing experiment like the Ripper and Chase videos were, cause I don't think I have anything to add. Now that that's out of the way, our first step is introducing the debut character the show focuses on. If I have to be honest, I'm not that big a fan of Millie. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate her. I could probably come up with a list of things I enjoy about Millie without much effort. Number 1, I like the shade of light brown on her jacket, its hex code being 9F8B69. This now concludes the list of things I like about Millie. Okay, I'm only half joking. If you walked up to your average Millie hater on the street and asked them what they disliked about Millie, it'd come down to 2 things. A, all she ever does is judge people, or B, she's really boring. Let's get that first complaint out of the way. Millie's judgmental personality isn't inherently a bad thing. Her introduction stating she's only here to write a book is pretty well done, even if I don't find it that compelling. Hell, we've seen judgmental dicks before with characters like Noah. I believe the lack of interactions behind her attitude is where her real issue lies. Millie's comments are always behind a confessional. I know the point of her character is to be a passive player nobody registers, so her conflict with Priya makes more sense. But it does lead to her feeling a little aimless for most of the early game, even if in retrospect I can see Millie's plotline being built up. So I'm gonna flat out say no. Millie judging people is not an issue. A realist perspective on some of the more animated characters is a welcome addition on paper. The main problem I've stated so far must be with B. She's really boring, which is a terrible discussion point, mind you. Calling Millie boring is a critique I'd make when I'm half asleep. Maybe I'd be more descriptive and call her a bowl of cornflakes. My point is, there's literally no way to combat it, since anybody who likes Millie can be swept away with a vague describing word such as boring, even if they come up with a million positive attributes. This causes discussions about Millie's character to go nowhere because of these vague describing terms. It'd be like talking to a brick wall. My name is Giggly Iggly, not brick wall ick wall. I need to rephrase the word boring into a question. Why do I think Millie's boring? Well, like I said, a good chunk of her conflicts with the cast are inside of her confessional. Her safe space that leads to a lack of challenge during the pre-merge. This is all with the exception of Scary Girl, which I'll get to later. Let's compare this to MK. She's another character who in the same season made it a point to stay under the radar, and she does most of her big plays in a confessional. MK downloading everyone else's confessionals is able to create a big stake in the game despite how boxed in she seems. It gets Julia caught red-handed in revealing her true nature. And would you speak of the devil? MK also finds out about Millie's book before everyone else. Too bad this plot point is picked back up by Bowie in episode 10, 5 episodes before this fact was revealed, and 3 episodes before the finale. If they're trying to make a slow build-up for her character, it didn't work for me. If it works for you, that's great. And I'm not even saying, oh, Millie should be more like MK and be a villain. No, I just want her clashes with the rest of the cast to make more apparent ripples in the game. Let's back up to episode 4 though. Like I stated, Scary Girl felt like her only big conflict during the pre-merge. And even then it felt poorly implemented. The basics are, Priya wants to make an alliance with her, Millie, and Scary Girl. Also, those three can give themselves a winning edge next time they have an elimination. As soon as this newly formed alliance is about to be tested out, Millie makes her first big impact in the game by betraying Priya, by killing Scary Girl and keeping Ripper. Now in a vacuum, I love this moment. It's a perfect last-minute twist within a seemingly obvious campfire ceremony, and it doesn't feel super contrived. My favorite part of this scene is that the writers didn't even feel the need to clarify Millie voted Scary Girl. All Millie does is say her piece.
If you, me, and Scary Girl voted for Ripper, how?
Who knows what Scary Girl did? I mean, she did just threaten all of us.
Almost as if the writers are trying to tell us, yeah, you know what's up. Unfortunately, one sacrifice this scene had to take for how good it is in the present is never explaining why Millie voted for Scary Girl over Ripper. And at first, I felt pretty annoyed about this lack of explanation. But on the other hand, there's enough justifiable reasons within this scene to make it make sense. There's a fair argument that Ripper is a more consistent player than Scary Girl. Or maybe Scary Girl calling Priya a friend made Millie scared that she was gonna lose Priya, changing the vote last second. Who knows? It's supposed to be treated as a mystery. So what the hell is my problem with this scene? Well, it doesn't come back later. Hell, the show goes pretty far into tricking you into thinking it does, because the beginning of the fart episode brings it up again. I'm fine with Scary Girl getting eliminated, but the thing that I'm mad about is that Priya never connects the dots herself, and it makes me feel like we're going nowhere. This is where my biggest gripe with Millie comes to fruition. At the end of the day, it's her pacing that puts me off. Take episode 8, for example. Priya reveals in her confessional that she's gonna vote Millie to make her feel like her security is being challenged, after walking out of the eating contest before anyone else. I like this, but their dynamic never feels like it changes after they have a conflict, because the next episode consists of hijinks with Z, and I'm not complaining, I love Z, he's the best character, but that's besides the point. It never gave off the impression of building up tension because they felt like the same friendship duo throughout everything. This is excluding episode 10 though. Oh shit, episode 10! I can bring up Chase! I can cross off the Chase reference in the video! He's the actual best character, fuck Z. Anyways, before the finale, this is my favorite Millie episode because it actually makes me feel like their friendship is being tested. Priya is taking the opportunity to be blunt after Millie's lack of caring about the competition.
You had no strategy, didn't try for alliances, put no effort into challenges, so why are you here?
I'm... Chris! I think Priya is suffering from sunstroke!
And in the same episode, Bowie found MK's phone and stated he was making a grand plan to sweep the finale. And what sucks even more is that the very next episode just didn't have them do anything I personally cared for. I'll give credit where credit is due though. Millie using that friendship bracelet to scare the crocodile was pretty cool. Unfortunately, by this point, I'm just sick of Millie's character. And it's not even for an objective reason like hiding behind a confessional without making a stake in the game. I've just grown accustomed to the loop of Millie doing something that the other contestants aren't fond of, and the subsequent episode not doing anything with that decision, so I found it hard to care. This duo being together in the last batch of episodes would have been so much more rewarding if there was some more adversity beforehand. We can celebrate them being friends again, while also waiting in bated breath for Bowie to finally drop the notebook. There was so much other shit Priya could have gotten mad at before the realization of what Millie's notes were actually for. It would have been great. That aside, I'm gonna go on a tangent about the most subjective thing in existence, humor. I don't find Millie funny at all, and that's all I'm gonna say. I've seen people say she's drop dead hilarious in season 1, and I don't get it at all. Here's a quick montage of every funny moment Millie had in season 1.
The human race is in serious jeopardy. But my research is going great! Ripper did it! He actually accomplished his... Why am I impressed by this?
Oh, but you're my best friend, and I want you to have it.
Okay.
Millie wins immunity!
If you can think of 1,000 other funny moments with Millie, that's great. We're never gonna agree. To bring up some more positive attributes about Millie's character, I thought episode 12 was a very good calm before the storm episode for Priya and Millie. Like sure, I was sick of Millie by this point, but it made sense to have the two paired up again, just so Bowie could break them up into what I consider the best scene in all of season 1. I love this moment, and it's everything I was campaigning for ever since the merge. Millie in the finale and her ability to play off of Ripper actually made me care about her. She clearly made the wrong decision sabotaging Priya's raft, and I like that it immediately comes back to bite her. This is a well done way to highlight Millie's flawed mindset of thinking she's above everyone else while simultaneously having just as animated moments of weakness that she disregards at first, but then overcompensates for. At the end of the day though, I couldn't forget how random she felt for so much of the season's runtime due to the pacing, especially when it culminates at the literal end of the season. So I never mentioned season 2 during any of this. And that's because I'm pretty cool with Millie for all of season 2. Sure, it's a much shorter runtime, which plays a helping hand when it comes to my personal enjoyment of her personality, but that aside, her plotline in season 2 consists of everything I liked about Millie in the latter half of her run, while trimming off everything I couldn't tolerate. Millie's method of overcompensating after thinking she's above everyone else is still present in different but more bite-sized ways, such as being scared to admit to not reading Priya's training book.
I never even opened it!
And pushing Damien down the deadly slide despite her better knowledge, which is simultaneously an animated moment of weakness that gets an asshole like me to more clearly see her struggles as a character in a much shorter runtime.
That crossed the line.
Yeah, the finish line.
You think this is funny?
It played off of Damien's character amazingly, and Millie was also able to tease the upcoming turmoil that comes with the next character in this video.
Priya is great at so many things. Hiding a crush is not one of them.
And I gotta say, Caleb is pretty fucking good. You might be thinking this goes against why I'm not too keen on Millie, but for reasons I'll clarify, I think there's a few key differences in the way their plot lines are paced that gives Caleb the upper hand in my eyes. While yes, I do believe there's apparent problems with Caleb's presence, they're far overblown in my opinion. I hope this can convince at least a few of you to take a second glance at his character, cause I'll be celebrating the day someone tells me my opinion changed their outlook. For my own sanity, I'm glad that Caleb's run in season 1 is as short as it is. He had one joke of thinking he'd be a perfect challenge beast before getting first boot out of left field, and that was really funny. It was able to efficiently amp up Bowie's run as a power player simultaneously. He and everyone else oversold Caleb's worth, and his team got rid of him the first chance they got, after uttering the hilariously goofy phrase,
This is garbage!
We had to wait till season 2 for Caleb to get any other types of characterization. When the rematch comes around, Caleb actually gets the opportunity to, say things, which introduces us to his main strategy of forming an alliance with last season's winner in order to have an easy path to merge. The logistics of his strategy don't matter in the grand scheme of things as long as Caleb's able to get properly characterized along the way. I think he was. Mostly, Caleb manages to start off as specifically a challenge beast who doesn't face much adversity. Admittedly, it's a slow pace, which doesn't leave the strongest impression, and outside of a few funny moments, I'm honestly not that big on Caleb during the first half of the show. But in retrospect of Caleb's last batch of episodes, there's some development going on. Specifically, the running joke of Priya being into Caleb, followed by him immediately, obliviously, and unintentionally shutting down any romantic possibility. Emphasis on unintentionally. Another key interaction is this one.
That's a lot of trust for an ex.
Well, I've dated, but I've only ever had one girlfriend.
For real?
Yup, Andrea Willis. We were both 5 years old. She broke up with me because I wouldn't let her try my skipping rope.
But have you had one girlfriend? I'm not saying I've had a lot of boyfriends. I have not. So, we have something in common.
I bet once we start spending more time together, we'll find out we have a lot of things in common.
Both Caleb and Priya are established to have no knowledge on dating, but for Caleb in particular, It shows a tease at social ineptitude beyond the surface level, albeit charming conversations. The writers are once again going for a slow-burning arc. Except this time there isn't some physical threat looming over them, like with Millie's notebook last season. All of their future conflicts lie in their own decisions that build off of these starting conversations. Episode 5 is when Priya faces her first bit of turmoil, and by proxy, it's Caleb's turmoil, revolving around best character Z. Being the horrible secret keeper that he is, Z starts hanging around Caleb in order to learn more about him and Priya's predicament after hearing Priya's side of the story first. And Z now thinking he knows both sides of the picture is when we get into Caleb's biggest dividing factor on whether people like or hate him. Was Caleb intentionally taking advantage of Priya's trust, or was he truly unaware that she had feelings for him? I'm here to argue with evidence that Caleb was uninformed and not willingly manipulative, while also figuring out where this misconception comes from. We're gonna have to bring out scenes from the show if we want to get to the bottom of this. That's how particular both Caleb and Z's wordings are.
Oh, I thought you liked her.
Nah, I mean, Priya's nice, but this is about the game. Strategy.
So far, Caleb's been very vague about his wordings, but he never shows being aware of Priya's crush on him being anything more than interest in the alliance. He sees this as strategy and nothing more, and Z takes his word on it.
Check out the flirting. Looks like love is in the air.
Nah, maybe he's just trying to create an alliance by using his charm and showing off his muscles.
But Damien's next sentence is where things go south.
Yeah, that's called flirting.
Damien points out and assumes Caleb knows better and that this is flirting. Caleb does not know better. If I had to make a headcanon assumption, Caleb's a very tone-deaf individual just from the sheer amount of times people have had romantic interest in him. Even if he doesn't realize it, now Z thinks Caleb is taking advantage of Priya. All in all, Caleb doesn't see himself as manipulating Priya. This is purely a mutual exchange for him by being his charming but not so obviously dense self. So yeah, I can see where this false pretense on Caleb's character comes from if we need to go this far into proving otherwise. I'm not going to say you guys are wrong for your takes on Caleb. This is the show's fault for not making it clear. Am I still going to defend Caleb? Hell fucking yeah! Z's contribution to the plotline is very good and very funny despite how it started. And right as this bad omen blooms, Caleb forms an actual interest in Priya beyond his gameplay. And I don't get when people say the Priya-lib ship has no chemistry. This is chemistry! They were both given monumental expectations by their parents and find comfort in knowing they're not alone. And I find that wholesome, even if it is simple. Before we know it, the Final 8 is able to swoop this fairy tale romance for a loop as Z finally breaks.
Priya, Caleb doesn't like you. He's just pretending so you'll help him win.
At this moment, Caleb must have realized just how long Priya's liked him, if we take into consideration that he's dull as fuck, which compelled him to be honest of why he first approached Priya. Like, sure, this started off as pretending, but to him it's just a formality. There's nothing manipulative to him about it until Priya starts crying. Caleb never admits to anything about fake flirting. Am I happy for pulling quotes directly from the show in order to clarify this? Not even a little. But from this point on, to me, Caleb goes from being a pretty middle-of-the-road character to one of my favorite parts this season. All because Caleb's fighting for his own and Priya's placement, even if it is from a flawed perspective. And unlike the Millie plotline, we get a much faster development of the tragedy that is Priya and Caleb's differing perspectives on morals within total drama. We don't just get 1 or 2 episodes to explore this conflict, but half a season. There's a much more even pace this time, as it rarely feels like their arc is at an impasse. Now, we're able to see several developments in Caleb's character of trying to win back Priya, fighting for himself, and sticking to his moral compass. That's the core of Caleb's character. His own conflicts oppose every other strategic competitor, which makes him simultaneously a liability and someone to depend on. He's the perfect role reversal of Justin or Alejandro. Just like them, he uses his charm and capabilities to get him far. Instead, this time, he doesn't know his own worth outside of general challenge ability. It's honestly a really cool concept. I find it super interesting that Caleb's able to both be an underdog and a challenge beast due to his own strengths and personal limitations. The most comparable previous contestant would be DJ due to their wimpy attitudes, but unlike Caleb, I think DJ's a lot more socially smart, so the way their conflicts play out are different because of this. But I don't know, I was super hyped whenever Caleb was able to come out on top of a challenge. Because I know he just wants the best for everyone. And while that is impossible, him staying another episode will further allow us to see his empathetic mindset get tested. Now that we're this far in discussing Caleb, no better time like the present to bring it up. He's fucking hilarious in my opinion.
Now I'm getting mad!
I have to say, most of the entertainment factor in his lines come from how perfect his voice actor's delivery is.
Nice! Real nice! Destruction of property is a crime, you know.
This should be a normal line, but the amount of whininess placed in his voice on top of having the form of a professional bodybuilder is so fucking amusing.
Well, I wasn't gonna let her fall to her death. Don't tell Priya I said that. Priya's gonna see this. Sorry, I'm a good person.
My favorite joke Caleb has is the running gag of someone trying to fuck him over, bringing the exact same normal reaction every time.
Oh, it's like that? Okay. Okay!
Ow! Oh, it's like that?
This is Caleb at his most ferocious, and that brings me so much joy. Does anyone else even relate to this? Am I a madman? At this point, I'm not beating the lunatic allegations, so let's fucking double down. You know who I'd compare Caleb to? Superman. They both are absolutely shredded, but have this dorky Boy Scout inclination that backs up everything they say, keeping up an obnoxious but sometimes infectiously hopeful attitude when facing adversity. I love it. But don't worry, I'm not saying this comparison is one-to-one. Caleb doesn't always do objectively the right thing, because he is still the biggest dope in the entire cast, and I don't want you to forget that.
Caleb wins!
Woo! I did it! I can't believe I won! This feels amazing! Priya?
This is apparent once Julia starts to make her way into their already rocky relationship. I can kind of understand where people are coming from when they say Prelude getting back together and breaking up immediately afterwards can get a little annoying, but I saw it as a great way to reflect on Caleb and Priya's differing senses of pride and hesitance, while also highlighting Caleb's fish-out-of-water approach to strategizing in total drama. Because come on, his only plan coming into this season is hiding behind the strongest competitor. I think it's safe to say he never knew what he was doing. Case in point, making an alliance with Julia to save Priya from getting voted off. This is genuinely one of my favorite parts of Season 2 of the reboot. This was such an amazing twist. I am begging you guys to ignore the Damien elimination. Don't look at it. Don't look at it. This is not a Damien video. Please pay attention to how good Caleb and Julia's alliance is for the season. Julia giving Caleb her immunity is a great way to show her manipulations without feeling like a cop-out. And this left field grand gesture gives Caleb even more of a complex in what he wants to do and what he should do. From his perspective, there isn't a cut and dry answer to this question, and that's what's even more compelling. Like sure, Caleb is able to keep Priya for an extra episode or two by sticking with Julia, but it also goes directly against Priya's wishes. Of course, hindsight on who this season's main villain is will obviously inform us Caleb's in the wrong by sticking with Julia, but that's okay, because we're seeing him justify his own logic firsthand. He's a flawed protagonist.
We have an agreement, not an alliance.
Call it whatever you want. Your vote belongs to me.
Still, I feel weird categorizing Caleb as right or wrong, as it kind of goes against Caleb's whole MO after he got deconstructed as a character in episode 8 onwards. That MO is sticking to his true self in an environment where his true self isn't welcome. He wants to be a strong challenge beast despite how far Julia will go to suppress him as a competitor, and just how much his choices get in the way of Priya's own security. On top of that, he also wants to be emotionally secure about his decisions. and he'll make moves with his heart first and his brain second, which is further pushed down by Priya. To summarize the prelude ship in one sentence, both of them have commendable outlooks that manifest negative outcomes because of their pride. That's the key word of the day, pride. Remember that. And it's why taking sides in this conflict is counterproductive. Both are equally in the right and wrong. All of their fighting, partially thanks to Julia, culminates into literally my favorite episode in the entire Total Drama reboot. Off the hook. We get little teasers towards Caleb's annoyance throughout the episode, and he even outwardly expressed them at one point in his confessional.
I hate lying. I'm a big truth guy. And truth is, I really want this conversation to be over.
Both Julia and Priya are pushing him into being the person he doesn't want to be, even if it is what he should be when competing. Caleb's struggle is honestly kind of relatable. I'm sure most of us have been pressured to do something we didn't want to do, no matter the rationale behind our choices. This scene right here is the climax to Caleb's entire arc. He hooks both Julia and Priya, giving himself the win, putting his own beliefs before anyone else's.
It's honestly fine. I was wrong to put Caleb in that position in the first place. But if he chose to electrocute himself in solidarity, that'd be cool too.
Does it hurt his girlfriend? Yes. Does it get her eliminated? Also yes. But if Caleb did hook Julia and potentially give Priya the win, he most likely would have gotten eliminated instead. This was the chance for Caleb to double down on his own flawed but optimistic belief that he should be himself if nobody else would support him. Prelude is a messy couple, to put it lightly. And you are not any less justified for saying Caleb is a complete idiot in this scene. But Caleb already saw how his idea of putting Priya first managed to completely backfire, giving him some sense of justification. If he could better communicate his struggles with Priya, none of this would have happened. But as long as he himself is still around, Caleb can take every lesson from his own experiences to heart and combat Wayne and Julia in the finale. I love Caleb's opening confessional.
$1 million. There must be a million charities out there who need that money. I'd give them $1 each. That sounded a lot better in my head.
This perfectly sums up his toxic positivity that fucks people over despite any moral high ground he has. Outside of the novelty of having a first boot being next season's finalist, Caleb's lawful good attitude is a great foil to Julia's neutral evil and Wayne's chaotic good. All three of them represent different aspects of the competition, and Caleb needed to be there for it to work. Finishing this off, I'm kinda glad Caleb didn't win, as that would go too far into the territory of proving all his ambiguous decisions were the right thing to do. Especially since Caleb and Priya ended up staying together. Caleb did not deserve the luxury of justifying his actions, and is left figuring out his own morals for himself, without the pressure of a reality TV show looming over him, and with Priya helping him along the way. I'm not gonna say Caleb's a perfect character because of how much I personally like him. Hell, he has one of the most jarring character shifts in the entire show due to how fast-paced they decided to dismantle him. He was not built up appropriately due to how little his morals matter in the starting half of the show. While I'll argue that there's nothing that directly goes against his character in the latter half, you did need to go with the show's punches a little too much instead of giving us a steady build-up to Caleb's ineptitude outside of a few scenes which were way too brief given the community's response to him. I still hope this segment of the video managed to leave you guys with a more positive outlook on Caleb. Now we're on to the last and most important character in this video, Priya. She was a core character in both of the reboot seasons, and played off of both Millie and Caleb in order to give us the show's biggest narrative through line across all 26 episodes. Luckily, we've technically already covered her full story since it's so woven into the other two's plotlines, meaning we only need to cover how their developments work for Priya's character specifically. Lucky for her, I think she's one of the best characters in the reboot when looking at both seasons overall. Thinking about how the show was ordered, that being 2 seasons with a back-to-back cast of characters, it was a smart choice making Priya's perspective the main way we look at the show. On a surface level, she's a character to help us get accustomed to the series' expectations of challenges and general strategy while not going too far off into the deep end of being morally questionable. The way this archetype is placed into the show fluently is by having her parents quite literally build her for total drama. The show has been treated as her entire world, and they use this in several ways, such as making her eyes in which returning fans notice references to past contestants. But mainly, it's used to give her a differing perspective from other contestants whose forte isn't something as grand as being good at everything. Priya has high expectations for everyone else around her, and that's both commendable and compelling, if sometimes unfair. In Season 1, this is most apparent with her subtle resentment of Millie's lack of caring about the competition. Like I said during the Millie segment, I wish this was much more prominent. I wanted Priya to challenge Millie's position more, because I like how both of them are able to explain their own sides to the story. So seeing some minor bit of turmoil beforehand would have made their differences all the more apparent when Bowie drops the notebook. I mentioned how episode 10 was the first time I was sold on Millie, and that's thanks to Priya's ability to evaluate her character up till that point. That was when I realized Millie did have a purpose, and by extension, it helped me understand Priya's purpose. Everything Priya wants out of her friends makes her interactions feel very black and white. As in, to Priya, you either make 100% a right choice or 100% a wrong choice, which complements both Millie and Caleb in the sense that their decisions do have some justifications around it. Whether it be Millie opting out of the eating challenge early for her own security, even if that is bad for the Alliance's trust, or Caleb taking Julia's immunity to keep Priya safe even if that does counteract all the work he put in trying to win her back. These were great ways to challenge Priya's fixed mindset due to the backstory she was given. Priya's expectations of others also reflect on herself. She'll hide away parts of herself that aren't fit for total drama, such as her crush on Caleb.
Oh, what am I doing? Do not fall for another competitor is literally rule number 12 on page 2 of the handbook.
On top of being blunt with others on their flaws when pushed hard enough, generally she'll keep herself in tip-top shape in order to leave a good impression. But unlike other power players like Bowie, she'll break much faster and much messier. I love that characterization. It feels realistic for someone who's expected to take so much pressure with no rest would not know how to deal with finally cracking. Plus, the animators did an amazing job showing the mental toll of everything we see. Never thought I'd be complimenting Total Drama's animation, but here we are. Now, when watching Season 1, admittedly I was rooting for Bowie more, but when watching it with Season 2 in retrospect, Priya's seemingly fairy tale ending is great so we can later watch it unravel. Right now she has everything. A new best friend, her parents' respect, and Priya also has more of an understanding towards Millie's reasons for writing about her parents, even if she never admitted to agreeing with it. Priya's parents acting as this looming threat behind every decision she makes will carry over into parts of Season 2, since going forward, they're the biggest loose end when it comes to giving her a conclusion. So, would I say Priya got a reasonable ending to her plotline in the reboot's second half? No. It was even better than I expected! Yeah, Priya's great in Season 2. She acts as the Ratface's unofficial team leader, which I think plays an even better helping hand in defining her as the reboot's protagonist. Another tidbit about Priya is she didn't even get the prize money at the end. This is definitely her parents' worst act of inflicting their control onto her that we see firsthand. But hey, on the bright side, Priya's in a much healthier place when it comes to relationships with others.
It was one mistake. You panicked, probably because you didn't read the training binder.
You knew? I'm so sorry. I planned to, I just got busy and then—
Hey, it's cool. I really don't care.
I believe the old Priya wouldn't take Millie's moment of weakness this well. I already mentioned her relation with Caleb on having strict parents, but I'll restate that this is a nice bond they both have. It's a good way for someone with this much of a one-track mind on conflict to get a new outlook. Plus, it only makes her relapse all the more engaging. Throwing boulders at Caleb is not good, and that's what makes it great. I found the much more animated portrayal of her personality the best thing they could have done with her after having everything go wrong. She has no $1 million. Her best friend got eliminated third. And the one other person she thought would be dependable and act as her rock is now Priya's own worst enemy. One thing I found pretty endearing is that not even a grand gesture like Caleb admitting his love would quote-unquote fix the relationship. Both of these characters have too much of an ego in their own outlooks on life, causing Caleb to fuck up and Priya to double down in outbursts after getting her patience tested. The most common fix for Season 2 I see is in Episode 10, they kill Priya in exchange for Damien. I kind of get where people are coming from when they say this, but in my opinion, that change with nothing else supporting it would be horrible for both Caleb and Priya. Caleb needed that angel and devil in the form of Priya and Julia on his shoulders to make his own struggles noticeable. Without Priya around, there'd be nobody left that'd reasonably be able to test him. Like sure, Damien could have been built into that character, but that'd make him feel even more jarring in my opinion. Damien's problems come from his own aimlessness as a character without much to work off of. With the way he was built up, there's not necessarily any right or wrong moment to get rid of him, and that's unfortunate. Caleb and Priya weren't these two demons sucking away on his precious screen time. He just had an anticlimactic and uneventful story after episode 6, so it made sense to keep the more flexible dynamic over him. Also, Julia choosing to keep Priya and manipulate their own insecurities was just a really entertaining villain moment, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, as this was the scene that sold me on Julia being the main villain across both seasons. I might make a Julia video, I don't know. Personally, I think it would be an unceremonious ending for Priya in general if she died here. For being as prominent of a character as she is, losing everything at the end of her run would feel a little weird. We don't need this grand happy ending, but one small victory would be nice. Going forward, I like that Priya is actually making an effort to make the Prelub ship work. Even if it's clear this is not a healthy dynamic when in the heat of the competition, and both characters are terrible at restraining themselves from making bold decisions. But on Priya's end, it shows more of an ability to empathize thanks to what she learned from Millie, and when the time comes for her to get eliminated, there is a change in her character, even if it is expressed in extreme ways. Now, you might be asking how Priya's parents correlate into this plotline, as that was the one loose end going off of Season 1. While yes, we don't get many direct references to them, I believe Priya's decisions in Season 2 go directly against what they want from her, and in a way this is Priya's big rebellion against them, causing her to be more outgoing and animated by the end of Season 2. Whatever their motivations are, they want Priya to be a total drama machine. Going against her training for a shot at Caleb was the first step in insurgency. Even more so, this is highlighted with the increased mental toll the game has taken on her. Caleb and Priya's relationship should both act as a warning for what high expectations can do to a person, and a first step in Priya breaking out of her fixed perspective. If you ask me, that's a pretty nice sentiment. Sure, this wasn't a physical fuck you to their influence on her, but for characters who didn't get a single hint of dialogue, I think the more subtle message delivery is okay. But at the end of the day, that is the summary of Priya's character. She's someone who, after following her parents, is able to realize how much more she's capable of. Winning Season 1 just so happens to be the least important thing that ever happened to her in the competition she spent her whole life aiming towards. Learning a better understanding of her two closest allies are what helped Priya come to this conclusion along the way, even if it's left up in the air just how self-aware she really is. Her best friend acts as the more realistic character, who, even if I have my own personal gripes with, Millie still acted as a great way to point out Priya's own lack of growth thanks to how she grew up. But on top of that, her newfound boyfriend is able to give Priya a sense of relation and a difference in how to deal with your own upbringings. They make it clear Priya still has a long way until she fully realizes what kind of person she could be. But I still love how giving Priya a sense of normalcy within a trio acted as her first step of defiance against what she was defined as. It's quite the pretty ending if you ask me, and it amps up Priya as one of my favorite protagonists in the whole series. I don't know what the future has in store for her, but an arc as relatable as this leaves me personally satisfied.